This conference will now be recorded.
Hello friends, good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Hope my screen is also visible. Yeah. So shall we start? You can respond in the chat box. Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you, Priya. Yeah. So good evening, friends. I'm Dr. Jyoti Milind, and I'm one of the mentor from the MRCOG Intense Preparation Group, right? Okay. And today, as you all know, we will be discussing about the COVID-19 all guidelines. Okay. So this COVID-19 guidelines not only about related to the pregnancy, but each aspect which is related to the gynec also. Huh? As you are all well aware that this RCOG have updated and they have given some guidance that how to manage all these conditions during this COVID-19 pandemic, right? Okay. So I'm not very sure that whether this question will come for your exam regarding this COVID-19 scenario and this thing. But I always think that just in a 1 hour, one or 1.5 hour, you will get an idea. And most of the time, I believe that even going after going through the all the guidelines, it is like a very much common sense because nowadays we are also very much practicing these guidelines. Okay, right? Okay, so it is not out of some rocket science or something which is very different. Okay, it is very easy, just an overview and quick overview we will go through during this session, and I'll tell you only important points. Okay, not all the things which are not necessary, right? Okay, so as I say to my students also, this is our destination, friend, which you have already dreamt of, and I'm very sure that seeing your hard work and a lot of efforts which you are putting, you are definitely be able to achieve this your destination. This is a new RCOG building, right? Okay, so college has now shifted to this new RCOG thing, yeah, building. So in the today's session, uh, I will be talking in detail about the COVID-19 and pregnancy. Also, I will be talking about the guidelines related to the early pregnancy care, abortion care. We will be also talking about sexual and reproductive health. Very small, important, very small but important points regarding endometriosis. then also related to the colposcopy and the abnormal uterine bleeding, and the last one is about the reproductive medicine, right? Okay, so in detail we will be seeing about the pregnancy, right? Okay, so coming to my first topic, it is about the coronavirus COVID-19 infection in pregnancy. Okay, so what is the purpose and scope of this guideline? Why this guideline has been developed? Okay, so these guidelines are designated for the healthcare professional, okay, who care for the pregnant woman during COVID-19 pandemic, to provide them advice regarding how existing clinical guidelines can be applied during this time, but not to replace them. Okay, will be still following the guidelines, the green top guidelines, RCOG guideline, all the guidelines, but how effectively we can implement them during this COVID pandemic. So that all guidelines involved in this. Okay, so one thing you need to keep in mind, because this is a very new, because of the evolving nature of COVID-19, right? Okay, currently there is a lack of high quality evidence, and much of the evidence comes from the good practice point, okay, or the grade D evidence, right? Okay, so this we have to keep in mind, because the guidance may change, right? Okay, coming to the epidemiology. So as you all know, this novel coronavirus SARS-CoV-2, it is a new strain of coronavirus causing COVID-19, and it was first detected or the first identified in Wuhan city of China during the end of 2019, right? Around December 2000, November or December 2019. There are also other type of the coronavirus, human coronavirus, which may cause mild to moderate upper respiratory tract illnesses, okay, and they are also responsible for MERS and SARS-like syndrome, right? Coming to the transmission. So how it gets transmitted? We are all aware that transmission of this COVID-19 is from human to human transmission mainly, because and this virus is can be readily isolated from the respiratory droplets, secretions, feces or fomites. Okay, then the transmission when it is high risk, when as we all know that whenever the infected person is within 2 meters, okay, or from the contaminated surface, okay, either it could be a close contact or from the contaminated surface also this transmission can happen, right? Then the important points which they have mentioned in the recent Embrace report, the rapid report, is the important point is which you need to keep in mind is pregnant women do not appear more likely to contract infection as compared to the general infection. Our idea is because the pregnancy is an immunosuppressant stage, right, or condition. So we may think that this in the pregnant woman this COVID-19 infection is more likely, but there is a no evidence, friends, till now. Okay, there is currently no evidence that the pregnant women are more likely to be severely unwell or need intensive care admission or die from the illness. Okay, so this you need to keep in mind. Okay, coming to the next point. So next point is about the vertical transmission to the baby. The recent evidence says that with regard to the recent evidence, see, the vertical transmission might be possible because they are able to detect, okay, able to detect infection in the babies within first 12 hours of birth. Okay, so that's why they say that the vertical transmission might be possible. Okay, what about neonatal infection? Okay, so regarding the neonatal infection for COVID-19, as it is uncommon, and very important thing which you need to keep in mind, friends, see, the rate of infection is no greater whether it is not dependent on whether the baby is born vaginally or you breastfed the baby or the stay with the woman after birth. It is not getting affected with this. Okay, it doesn't mean that if the baby gets born vaginally, baby is at a high risk. It doesn't, study doesn't, till now the study doesn't shows that. Okay, hope I am clear. Okay, am I clear this regarding these 4 points? The important point which you need to keep in mind is pregnant women do not, okay, appear to be at more high risk. Okay, coming to the effects of COVID-19 on pregnant women. Okay, so most of the time the infection may be asymptomatic, or there can be a very mild or moderate cold or flu-like symptoms, okay, which can be cough, fever, SOB, headache, or anosmia. Sometimes there could be a severe symptoms which are suggestive of pneumonia or marked hypoxia, and they are more common in older people Immunocompromised people like who are having chronic conditions like diabetes, cancer, or chronic lung disease, right? Okay, and the symptoms of severe infection are not different from the pregnant woman. That's why early identification and assessment with the prompt supportive treatment is the key for the management of these women, right? Hope I am clear. Okay, so mostly it doesn't differ from that of the general population. Okay, symptoms are as which are presenting in the general population also. And now this guideline says that the COVID-19, this COVID-2 related associated maternal mortality rate is about 5.6 per 1 lakh maternities. Okay, maybe this thing you have to need to keep in mind, but I still feel that they will not go in a more detail of this COVID-19. Okay, the other important point I want you people to keep in mind is the risk factor. Okay, risk factor for what? Hospital admission with COVID-19. Who are the pregnant women who are at a high risk of requiring hospital admission? Okay, so these 4 points you have to keep in mind. One is the black ethnicity, Asian or minor ethnicity, that is in short called as in BAME. Okay, overweight or obese women, pre-existing comorbidities, and maternal age more than 35. Okay friends, I am repeating the 4 risk factors. Okay, one is BAME ethnicity, overweight and obesity, pre-existing comorbidities, and maternal age more than 35, right? Okay, so this thing you need to keep in mind. This is a very important point. Okay, hope I am clear. Coming to the other important point, this report says that the vitamin D deficiency, okay, so vitamin D deficiency is associated with the ARDS, which is seen in the COVID-19. Vitamin D deficiency is associated with the ARDS in COVID-19. Okay, and the current UK guidance recommends vitamin D supplementation to all pregnant women and individuals of BAME background regardless of the COVID pandemic. Okay, and why these women, BAME women, black Asian women are at more risk? There may be some socio-economic or genetic factors related to it. Okay, hope I am clear. Okay, is it clear friends? I'll be posting the recording for the session. Okay, is it clear? Lakshmi?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you Dinesh. Yeah, at any point of time if you feel that I'm going fast, okay, please feel I can repeat those things and you can ask for that. Okay, so as we have seen this vitamin D deficiency, so related to that, now as we all aware that lifestyle measures such as the exercise, healthy diet, and vitamin D supplementation, they are recommended throughout the pregnancy especially. Okay, so that point you need to keep in mind. So are there any effect? We have seen that what are the symptoms, okay, how the woman can present. Okay, so are there any effects on the baby? So you have to just keep one generalized thing in your mind. No. Okay, there is a no increased risk of miscarriage. There is a no relation between infection and second trimester loss, and also there is still no evidence of fetal growth restriction. Okay, so it doesn't cause any problem to the baby, but as I have mentioned in my first slide, there can be a slight increased risk of vertical transmission, right? Okay, the other point is about the preterm birth. Okay, so see friends, according to this study, UCOS study, the median gestational age at birth was 38 weeks, okay, for this mother who had COVID-19, but almost 27% of the women had the preterm birth, but most of them were, almost 47% were because of the it was iatrogenic reason to maybe to resuscitate the mother for the maternal compromise, and 15% were iatrogenic related to fetal compromise, right? Okay, and of that 10% babies required admission. Okay, as I already mentioned in my previous slide, see the positive, almost 2.5% babies found to be positive within first 12 hours of birth. Okay, so there is a slight increased risk of this thing, baby getting vertical infection. Okay, and the second one is about the preterm birth. Okay. Then coming to the how do we need to care and give a antenatal care to this woman during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. So first of all, see it is very important to continue their routine antenatal care, but it may be required to be little bit modified unless they meet the current self-isolation criteria. So what is current this self-isolation criteria, which is mentioned by Public Health India, PHE. Okay, so it is nothing but the same. Any woman who is having fever since last 7 days, this throat pain or anosmia, myalgia, so this is called the self-isolation criteria. Okay, so unless they meet the this self-isolation criteria, okay, or any symptoms of COVID-19, they can have the routine antenatal care. But what is our worry is to decrease the community transmission, right? Okay, so all the measures which are related to that, woman needs to be helped for that. So it is required to assist women for practicing social distancing measure and to reduce the risk of transmission between women and staff and the hospital visitors. Okay, so basic assessment of the blood pressure and urine testing still needs to be done. Okay, and unit should employ teleconferencing or video conferencing wherever possible. Okay, in-person appointments, when in-person appointment, that means face-to-face contact is required, then they should be arranged along with other face-to-face appointments. Suppose a woman is requiring blood test, so blood test. Okay, so you can arrange her. If she requires scan, all needs to be clubbed in one go. Okay, not that she has to come for the each and everything again and again. Okay, so that is the point. Okay, then regarding the consideration of the antenatal appointment. So first of all, regarding the staff member, the staff member should wear adequate personal protective equipments, okay, during the face-to-face visit. The information and guidance should be available in the all language. Okay, then women and any visitor accompanying should be advised to wear face masks or face covering in line with the national guidelines. Okay, and the BAME background, okay, which we have already discussed. This BAME background women should be advised that they are at a higher risk of having COVID complication. So they should seek advice urgently, okay, if they have any concern. And we as a clinician also needs to be aware of that increased risk, and we should have a lower threshold to review, admit, and consider multidisciplinary escalation for this BAME background women. Okay, got it? Why? Because these women at a high risk of developing COVID complications, right? What is the point which has changed in antenatal care? See, friends, carbon monoxide testing for the smoking, okay, for with to assess the defect damage due to the smoking. They usually do the carbon monoxide testing for the pregnant woman. This has been paused during this period. Okay, as you can guess, it becomes impossible. Okay, so and the midwife, but regarding her smoking status, midwife and doctor still needs to document her smoking status at booking at 36 weeks and provide her brief advice, and if required she should be referred to the specialist stop smoking services. Okay, the other important point from the routine antenatal care is to continue with the folic acid and vitamin D. Okay, hope I am clear. So the point which you need to keep in mind is the carbon monoxide testing has been stopped, okay, during this pandemic. Okay, but we need to continually assess her risk. Then we need to continue the support, advice, and care and guidance, especially to the women who are living with the adversities. Okay, that means who are the women who are living in adversities, like the women who are very poor, homelessness women who use the substance, okay, asylum seeker. For these women we need to continually provide support, advice, care, and guidance. Okay, the other important aspect of this antenatal care is to rule out the domestic abuse. Okay, and during this pandemic these women are at a high risk of having the domestic abuse, so we should be more aware to rule out the increase. We should know that there is an increased risk of domestic abuse, okay, during this pandemic, and that's why we need to be very sympathetically ask the woman, okay, regarding her domestic abuse. We should encourage her to share her concerns, okay, during her visits. Okay, then clinician should maintain a face-to-face appointment whenever there are any safeguarding issue, you are suspecting any domestic violence thing, then these reviews should be face-to-face. Okay, because on the online or in the video conference thing she may not have that much of privacy. Okay, so that's why it is better to have those appointments face to face. Okay, apart from that, the domestic violence, the second important point is about the mental health. Okay, so you need to inquire every time about the mental health, and if any woman require any support, further support, they should be properly signposted to the resources or local services. Okay, then coming to the care of the suspected or confirmed COVID-19. Okay, how we are going to care where we are suspecting that she may have this COVID-19 because of her symptoms, or where the COVID test is positive, how we are going to give her antenatal care. So first of all, the very important point this guideline says that if the woman reports symptoms which is attributed to COVID-19 on phone to the maternity service, consider differential diagnosis for fever, cough, change or loss of sense and sense of smell or taste, or the shortness of breath. Don't only concentrate on the COVID-19. Right? Okay, even if she is showing the signs and symptoms, consider the differential diagnosis. So what all could be the differential diagnosis we need to consider? Important differential diagnosis. These are the urinary tract infection, chorioamnionitis and pulmonary embolism. Right? Okay. And any woman who is having symptoms suggestive of COVID-19, they can self-refer to the COVID-19 testing. Okay, online COVID, they can self-refer online for the COVID-19 testing. With the possible or confirmed COVID-19 in whom hospital attendance is required, they should be advised to attend the hospital by private transport, and women should be asked to alert the member of the maternity staff by mobile telephone of their attendance when she comes in the hospital premises prior to entering into the hospital or midwife led unit. That means once she reaches the hospital, she has to inform the maternity staff that I have come. Okay, then so that the people, the staff will be ready. Okay, then coming to the next point. So see, they say that the woman should be met at the maternity unit entrance by staff wearing the PPE to provide a fluid resistant surgical mask. When she comes, staff which is in PPE will receive her. Okay, and they will give her the fluid resistant surgical mask. Okay, and also the staff needs to take all the PPE precaution as per the National Health Protection Guidance. Okay, then she need to be immediately escorted to the isolation room or the cohort bay or what. Okay, and they should have, this isolation room should have a defined area where they should have a different separate facility for the changing the PPE or removing the PPE. Okay, then woman should wear the mask till she reaches the room. Okay, or till she is isolated. So the mask should not be removed until she is isolated. Okay, and only essential staff should be allowed to enter into the isolation room. Okay, visitors should be kept minimum, and the local policies of the hospital should be followed. Right? Okay, all the non-essential items from the room should be removed prior the woman entering into the room, and this area must be cleared using the current national guidance. Okay, then how we are going to care for the woman who is recovered from the COVID-19? Suppose she had just only mild, moderate or no symptoms without requiring admission, her what do you say, antenatal care will be same as it was a previous. Okay, and if she had missed any antenatal appointments, then you will see that she will attend other antenatal appointment as early as possible. Okay, suppose the woman who has recovered from the serious or critical illness. Okay, if she has recovered from the serious or critical illness, then her antenatal management, okay, should be planned together with the consultant obstetrician, and the second important point, which is applied only to the woman who has recovered from the serious or critical illness. Okay, the point is that she should be offered a fetal growth scan approximately 14 days following their recovery from the illness. Okay, in the first instance, unless there is a pre-existing other cause. Okay, so first thing is her antenatal care will be planned by discussion with the consultant obstetrician, and the second point is you will offer her fetal growth scan. Okay, fetal growth scan after 14 days. Right? The other important aspect of this guideline is about the prevention of thromboembolism. Okay, so that also this guideline do mention very clearly. Okay, the first of all, regarding the prevention, this guideline says that the woman who are self-isolating at home should stay well hydrated and mobile. Right? Okay, and woman should have risk assessment, VTE risk assessment according to the RCOG Green Top Guideline number 37A. Okay, and the infection with COVID-19, it should be considered as a transient risk factor and trigger reassessment should be done. Where she should continue with the prescribed thromboprophylaxis. Okay, already if she is on thromboprophylaxis, that needs to be continue. Okay, if there are concern about the risk of venous thromboembolism during the period of self-isolation, okay, then also the VT risk assessment should be done, and this thromboprophylaxis should be advised to her. We should also see that she gets the proper supply of the low molecular weight heparin. The important point is this, friends. See, the thromboprophylaxis commenced for the women who are self-isolating should continue until they get recovered from the acute illness. Okay, until their recovery, they should continue with the thromboprophylaxis. Okay, so usually it varies between 7 to 14 days. Okay, then see, all the pregnant women who have been hospitalized, we were talking about the self-isolating. This point was about the self-isolating women, but all the pregnant women who have been hospitalized and had confirmed COVID-19 should receive thromboprophylaxis 10 days following the hospital discharge. Okay, so only home isolation till they have the disease. Okay, and for the who are hospitalized, for them 10 days post discharge. Okay, those who are having persistent morbidity, they may require longer duration of thromboprophylaxis. Okay, then the next thing is about the postnatal woman. See, if the woman is admitted with the confirmed or suspected COVID-19 within 6 weeks postpartum, then also she should receive the thromboprophylaxis for the duration of their admission and 10 days after the discharge. Okay, so that you need to keep in mind. Okay, all the hospitalized women will take thromboprophylaxis 10 days post discharge. Okay, and sometimes you may need to consider the extending this thromboprophylaxis for 6 weeks also. Okay, coming to the labor and birth, what are the guidance regarding the labor and birth during the COVID-19 pandemic? Okay, so first is about the asymptomatic who are tested positive for the COVID-19. Okay, if they wish to give birth at a home or in midwifery led unit, it is recommended that first of all they should have an informed discussion. Okay, because they may worsen, they may need some extra care. Okay, so they need to be given all the information. Okay, so what are care will be available in the midwifery unit, or maybe some any difficulty if she delivers at a home, that needs to be informed to her. Okay, so on admission for asymptomatic positive women, friends. Okay, so on admission, this continuous electronic fetal monitoring or on admission CT is not recommended. Okay, it is not recommended. Routine things once, just because she is positive, it is not recommended. Okay, and the fetal monitoring options should be discussed with her. Okay, suppose the woman is suspected or confirmed, or she is symptomatic, she should be encouraged to remain at home till till she is in active labor, or in the she should be in the at home in the early or latent phase of labor. Okay, if a woman have a symptom suggestive of COVID-19, she is in labor, she can self-refer for the testing also. Okay, online. And if there are no concern regarding to the woman or baby, okay, they may return home until the labor is more established, and provided that they must have the private transport so that they come to the hospital when the labor gets established. That means in active labor. Okay, so to decrease their stay in the hospital as much as possible. Okay, during this period, the woman should be given advice regarding the signs and symptoms of the labor. In addition, she should be also informed about the symptoms that might suggest deterioration in the COVID-19. Okay, advice on the PPE should be followed up. Okay, and all the friends, this is an important point. Okay, so all the symptomatic confirmed or suspected COVID-19 patients are recommended to labor and give birth in an obstetric unit. Okay, or consultant led care unit, right? Okay, so but asymptomatic they can opt for the home or midwifery led unit, but symptomatic and positive, okay, symptomatic or suspected COVID-19, they will be delivered in a obstetric unit. Okay, so once they get admitted into the labor room, what are the assessment you are going to do? Okay, so on admission, it is very important to do the full maternal and fetal assessment, right? Okay, and that should be done by the most senior person. you will observe her, record her maternal vitals like temperature, respiratory rate, and oxygen saturation. You will see that the confirmation of onset of labor, and for them, continuous electronic fetal monitoring using CTG is required. Okay, continuous electronic fetal monitoring is required. Then all the members of the MDT should be informed of her admission. Whenever any woman with the COVID-19 gets admitted, all the members of the MDT is multidisciplinary team, means where from expert from the various faculty will be involved. So here the consultant obstetrician, consultant anesthetist, midwife in charge, consultant neonatologist, and neonatal nurse in charge will be informed, okay, that this patient has got admitted. So how we are going to monitor her? So standard hourly maternal observation and assessment should be performed. Hourly oxygen saturation monitoring should be done, and we need to give, if she required any oxygen therapy, we need to aim the saturation above 94%, right? Okay, so this thing you need to keep in mind. As I have already mentioned, any symptomatic confirmed or suspected COVID-19 should be offered continuous electronic fetal monitoring, right? And the very important point which you need to keep in mind is, friend, there are no contraindication for the fetal blood sampling, or for using fetal scalp electrode, right? Okay, so keep this thing also in mind, that there are no contraindications to fetal blood sampling or the use of the fetal scalp electrode. In the labor room, it is very important to minimize the number of the staff required. Okay. Then coming to the labor and birth of the woman who has recovered. Okay. So those who are recovered from the COVID-19 without requiring admission to the hospital, and who had a completed their self-isolation, there will be like a normal antenatal care, no change in the plan of the care. Okay, so those who are recovered following the hospital admission for a serious or critical COVID-19 illness needing supportive therapy, the place of the birth should be discussed with the woman and with the family along with the consultant obstetrician. Okay, they needs to be given all the information. Then personalized assessment should be taken into the consideration for the like fetal growth, and woman choices needs to be taken into the consideration. Okay, regarding the birth partner who will be there with them, okay, during the labor. So see, all the birth partners who are there, who are coming with the woman who is coming in labor, okay, they should all be asked about their symptoms suggestive of COVID-19. Okay, so suppose they have the symptoms suggestive of COVID-19 which has begun in just last 7 days or less, or they remain symptomatic. Okay, then what we need to do is we need to ask them the maternity unit immediately, and they need to self-isolate them at home. Okay, but if the birth partner is asymptomatic, they can be permitted to stay, okay, throughout their labor and birth, unless the birth is taking under the general anesthesia. Why? Because through the general anesthesia, inhalation and the risk to the surrounding members will be there. Okay, so only birth under general anesthesia he can't attend. Okay, otherwise they can attend the labor and birth of the woman whom with they have come. Okay, then other important point regarding the birth partner is they should ask to remain by the woman's bed and not to walk around in the hospital and ward, and restriction on the other visitors should be done. Okay, coming to the timing and mode of birth during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so first of all, it should be discussed with the woman and her family, taking into the consideration her obstetric and fetal indications. Okay, the personal assessment should be made to assess whether it is beneficial to delay elective cesarean section or induction of the labor for women who are currently in a period of self-isolation because of the suspected COVID-19. Okay, so it is preferable to delay. Okay, women and their families should be aware that the donning of the PPE for the emergency cesarean birth is time consuming, and this may impact on the time it takes to assist the birth of the baby and potentially result in an adverse outcome. Okay, so UK people are very particular about the each and everything. See friends, if the woman is attempting for the normal vaginal delivery, and if anything happens like fetal distress and this thing, and you decide for her to take up for the cesarean section or any instrumental birth, you need to equip yourself first with the proper PP, okay, and that may take some time, and that may adversely affect in delaying the birth of the baby and may result in an adverse outcome. So this needs to be first only, you need to be informed to the woman and her family, okay. So other important aspect of this guideline is for the consideration regarding the water birth. See, the water birth is not contraindicated for the women who are asymptomatic of COVID-19 and presumed or confirmed COVID negative. Okay, okay. So asymptomatic normal, this water birth is not contraindicated, but any symptomatic COVID-19 with fever, cough, or feeling unwell, okay, this labor birth is contraindicated. It is not recommended, right? But asymptomatic woman, but who has tested positive. So what should we do? Again, it is woman's decision. You should tell her that there is inadequate evidence about the risk of transmission of the virus in the water, and after all, it will be her choice. Okay, if she is asymptomatic. But for the symptomatic patient, friends, you are not allowing water birth. Okay, because why? Because the integrity of the personal protective equipment and the face mask may be compromised, okay, during the water birth, because it gets wet. Okay, then coming to the labor analgesia and anesthesia considerations, whether this gas Entox can be used. Yes, it can be used, but the only concern regarding is the filter. So it can be used with the single patient microbiological filter. Okay, so the filter need to be changed for the every patient. Okay, then if it is possible, the woman need to be counseled for the epidural analgesia early in the labor only. Why? Because if any emergency occurs, and if then she may need the general anesthesia, sudden umbilical cord prolapse, or you need to expedite the birth, so you may need to use the general anesthesia, and that may increase the risk of the COVID-19 infection both to the patient and to the staff. Okay, so if she is already on the epidural analgesia, then there will be no worry. So that thing you need to be counseled to the woman. Okay, if it is required, you can instill this epidural analgesia early in the labor. Okay, then coming to the next point is about the personal protective equipment during labor and birth. Okay, so always keep in mind, whenever the personal protective equipment thing comes, that is, we need to follow the whatever the national recommendations are there. Okay, and mostly they are must. Okay, for the PPR required for the cesarean birth, especially when we are doing it in under general anesthesia. Okay, how the theater should be managed. So all the elective obstetric procedure, for example, like cervical cerclage or even the elective cesarean section, should be done as an end of the operative list. Okay, in the last of the operation list of that day, you will do that. Okay, elective procedure. But for the emergency procedure, it is required to open the second obstetric theater, separate obstetric theater. That will be fine. Okay, and the number of the staff should be kept minimum with the appropriate PPE. Okay, regarding the anesthetic care for the confirmed or suspected COVID-19, the guidelines which are there for the from the Royal College of Anesthesiology, that should be considered. Okay, then this bereavement services should be continued. Okay, they should maintain the same standard as it was previous. Okay, then how to manage the woman who is deteriorating. Okay, managing clinical deterioration during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so again, as you know, the first important thing which you need, we already mentioned in our last few slides, no. So any fever, investigate as in sepsis. Okay, not like only COVID-19. Okay, so if a woman attends with a fever, investigate and treat as the RCOG guidance on the sepsis. Okay, and but along with the blood culture, you will also offer the testing for the COVID-19. And this says that do not assume that all pyrexia are because of the COVID-19. Okay, consider the other differential diagnosis which we have seen, like chorioamnitis, urinary tract infection, like that. Okay, and if there is a possibility of the bacterial infection, perform full sepsis screening and administer IV antibiotic when appropriate. Okay, consider bacterial infection whenever there is a raised blood count and commence the antibiotic. Okay, then women should be offered testing for COVID-19 if they meet the inpatient or the community public health in England criteria. So what is the current criteria for the inpatient admission? Okay, what is the criteria? So this is the criteria, friend. Okay, So a loss of or change in the normal sense of the taste or smell in isolation or in combination with other symptoms of COVID-19, clinical radio or the radiological evidence of pneumonia, ARDS, temperature more or equal to 37.8 degree, and at least one of the following, like acute persistent cough, hoarseness, nasal discharge and congestion, shortness of breath, sore throat, wheezing and sneezing. Okay, so any one is the criteria for the admission. Okay, criteria for the admission. Okay. The other important point I want you to keep in mind is about the imaging in the pregnancy, right? Okay, so this guideline specifically mentions that these radiological investigations like chest x-ray and CT should be performed as if you are doing in a non-pregnant woman. Okay, why? Because mother is always a priority. Okay, then it should be done. Okay, chest x-ray and wherever required. Chest imaging, especially the CT of the chest, is essential for the evaluation, and it should not be delayed because of the concern of the possible fetal exposure. Okay. The diagnosis of the pulmonary embolism and heart failure should be considered in a woman with chest pain, hypoxia and tachypnea, that is respiratory rate more than 22. Okay, or if in the woman whose breathlessness persists or worsens after the expected recovery from the COVID-19. Okay, even the sudden deaths are common in the COVID-19. So maybe because of the pulmonary embolism. Okay, so that you need to keep in mind. So, suspect the diagnosis of the pulmonary embolism, and for that, whatever the additional investigations are required, you will do that: ECG, CT, pulmonary angiogram, and echocardiogram. Okay. Then coming to the management of the clinically deteriorating patient. First of all, we should be, as a obstetrician also, we should be familiar with the local protocol regarding the investigation and care of this patient. Okay, and it should be same almost as it should be similar as far as possible. Okay, to the same as compared to the non-pregnant. Okay, that should be the priority for the medical care should be to stabilize the woman's condition first. Mother always comes first. Okay, in the monitoring of the critically care woman, you will do hourly observation of respiratory rate and oxygen saturation. Okay, what are the signs of this decompensation? Whenever there is an increase in the oxygen requirement or FiO2 requirement more than 40%, a respiratory rate of more than 30, reduction in urinary output whenever she is having drowsiness, even if the oxygen saturation are normal. So these are the signs of the decompensation. Okay, so that's why whenever any decompensation occurs, escalate urgently. Okay, take the other higher opinion urgently. For sometimes what happen, even the young fit woman compensate for the deterioration for a long time till suddenly she deteriorate. Okay, so that all the points you have to keep in mind, and maintain saturation more than 94%. Apply the caution with the intravenous fluid management. Then for the moderate to severe symptoms of the COVID-19, you will do an hourly input and output chart. Okay, achieve proper neutral fluid balance in the labor, and try boluses in the volume of 250 to 500 ml rather than giving the continuous infusion, no, because they are at a high risk of ARDS. So what they are saying that just give little bit bolus and judge. Okay, and if required, then only again give the next fluid. Okay, so they are saying in that way rather than continuously giving her a high amount of infusion. Okay, then have a low threshold to start the antibiotic at presentation. Early review and rationalization of the antibiotics if COVID-19 is confirmed. Okay, even if the COVID-19 is confirmed, okay, still there may be the coexisting conditions, so still you can give the antibiotics. Okay, then suspected COVID-19 should not delay administration of the therapy until the test results are available. Woman with the suspected COVID-19 should be treated that as though it has confirmed. Okay, so she should be followed the same protocol. MDT planning meeting should be arranged urgently for any unwell woman with suspected COVID-19. Okay, and in this MDT, all these people will be involved. All the information, it is very important, need to be shared with the woman and her family. Okay. Yeah, see, sometimes this thrombocytopenia is associated with severe COVID-19 infection. Okay, so whenever the platelet count is less than 50,000, what you need to do is, if she is on any aspirin or this thing, thromboprophylaxis, stop that. Okay, stop aspirin prophylaxis and thromboprophylaxis, and what you need to do is seek the hematology guidance. Okay, and in between you can offer her the mechanical aids like calf compressor. Okay, there may be the possible myocardial injury, as you all aware that possible myocardial injury, and the symptoms are similar to those of the respiratory complication. So that also we need to keep in mind. Regarding the role of the steroid, okay, so this recovery trial says that the steroid therapy should be considered for 10 days or to the hospital discharge, whichever sooner, for the adults unwell with the COVID-19 and requiring oxygen. Okay, and the dose they said that they can use prednisolone 40 milligram once a day, or hydrocortisone, IV hydrocortisone, right? Okay, 80 milligram twice a day. Okay, so that needs to be given. Okay, and if required, according to the consideration or MTT opinion, they may also offer the antiviral like the remdesivir. The individual assessment should be done by the MDT regarding the emergency cesarean section or induction of labor is indicated, either to assist efforts in a maternal resuscitation or where there are the serious concerns regarding the fetal condition. Okay, so depending upon the individualized assessment, whether that mother who is deteriorating require any delivery of the baby, that need to be done. And individualized assessment means maternal condition and fetal condition, and priority is always mother, woman. Okay, if the urgent intervention is intervention for the birth is indicated for the fetal reason, birth should be expiated as for the normal obstetric condition. Okay, as long as the mother is stable. If the mother stabilization is required before intervention for birth, this is the priority. Always mother is a priority. Antenatal steroids can be used fresh. Okay, so that can be given for the fetal lung maturation. Also, the magnesium sulfate can also be used for the neuroprotection. Coming to the quick postnatal care. So see, the woman, the babies who are healthy, they can be kept together with the mother. Okay, they do not require any special care. They can be the babies who looks healthy. They don't have any problem. Okay, women with the suspected or confirmed COVID-19 should be supported or enabled to remain with their babies and to practice skin to skin or kangaroo care if the newborn does not require any additional medical care. Okay, see, if the baby needs to be cared in the care for some elements. Okay, so then precautionary approach should be used, and to minimize any risk of woman to infant transmission. Okay, so if the baby is sick, then yes, you need to take care, but if the baby is healthy, doesn't you need not do anything extra. Okay, and the parent should always be involved in the decision. Any suspected, probable or confirmed COVID-19 infection should be supported to breastfeed if they choose. Breastfeeding is still feasible. Okay, then you will discuss all these benefits of the with the help of the neonatologist. Okay, and babies should be managed according to the guidance of the Royal College of Pediatric and Child Health. Okay, and the guidance which is related to the management of the neonatal resuscitation, that should be according to the Resuscitation Council. Regarding the infant feeding, we all, as I have told, that breastfeeding is recommended. Where there is an issue or woman is not well, you can ask them if she is not able to feed her baby directly, then either she can be used express breast milk or donor breast milk she can be used, but breastfeeding is safe. Okay, all the precautions who are taking care of the baby, all the precautions needs to followed. Okay, so consider asking someone who is well to feed the baby, wash hands, avoid coughing and sneezing, consider wearing the face covering or the fluid resistance mask while feeding the baby, but baby should not wear the mask. Okay, because the risk of suffocation. Okay, then the dedicated breast pump should be used. Follow the recommendation from the pump for the pump clinic proper, and the proper sterilization guidelines should be maintained. Okay, postnatal care following the admission with the COVID-19. All the households are advised to self-isolate at home for 14 days after the birth of the baby to a woman with the COVID-19. Okay, advice about the safe sleeping and smoke-free environment, proper hand hygiene, infection control measure should be given to them. Even the family also, you will provide them proper guidance how to identify the signs and symptoms, worsening signs and symptoms that needs to be identified. Okay, so friends, whole these three charts. See, at the end of this guideline, no, you will have 2 or 3 pages chart of this. Okay, so this is the crux of this thing. Okay, if you listen to my this thing, no, carefully, you can, what you can just do is you can just go through this chart, okay, which is there at the end of this thing, and you have to revise only this thing. Okay, hardly 2 or 3 pages, there is nothing much in that. Okay, so this is sufficient. Okay, with this I end with the COVID-19 and pregnancy. Fine. Any question in this? Any question in this?
Ma'am, will you be sharing this? Will you be sharing this teaching?
I'll be posting recording. Even it will be available on our YouTube channel, dear.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Shall we quickly go to the other topics if everybody is comfortable?
If the woman is COVID-19 positive, the baby can be with the mother, ma'am. No extra care.
Yes, dear. You need to see the baby. If the baby is fine, if the baby doesn't need any medical care, no, baby can be with the mother. But if the baby has some concerns, then you need to take the precautions, right?
Okay, ma'am. No drugs are needed for the
No,
baby.
no, nothing, dear. Nothing, Ramya.
For the mother, ma'am?
For mother, whatever treatment she is continuing, she has to take.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah. So quickly we will go through the other topics, friends.
Yes,
I'll tell you what are the important thing, no? Then those only we will take. So the next topic is about the early pregnancy services, how they have changed. Okay, that you need to keep in mind. Okay, so always keep one thing in mind: the for them this for the NHS, all the guidelines or this guidance has been intended to decrease this face-to-face contact, okay, or the load on the NHS. So if any question comes, no, the same logic you can apply on the question and you can answer, I feel, because there is nothing great in this. Okay, regarding the early pregnancy services, okay, for the in the evolving COVID-19 pandemic. So you must be aware that all the antenatal appointments are like a video conferencing or teleconferencing thing for the screening, okay, for just without any problem. Okay, so then women should be asked to attend the appointments alone or as per the local visiting restrictions during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, whenever there is a if the woman needs to attend the face-to-face appointment, okay, for the physical examination or the scan, first of all you need to ask her regarding the her any symptoms or related to the COVID-19. Okay, and if she has any symptoms, she has to be at home. Okay, if the any woman attends antenatal appointment or attends the face-to-face appointment and during that appointment she says that I have symptoms, then what you are going to do, you have to ask her to return immediately to the home and she need to be self-isolated. Okay, if an urgent assessment in person or ultrasound scan is required for confirmed or suspected COVID-19 infection, then the separate room and ultrasound machine should be available. Okay, so this is the recommendation. Then whenever you are caring for any COVID-19 infection, all the members of your team must be highlighted for that. Okay, that she is the woman with the COVID-19, so that they will be able to take the appropriate care. Okay, then if the woman requires admission to the hospital, location will depend upon the reason for her admission and local policies unless her COVID-19 testing confirms her status. Okay, suppose she has come in an emergency with the giddiness and this thing or any hyperemesis problem, so according to that severity and level of her severity you will admit her. Okay, regarding the appointments, so delaying appointments wherever appropriate. Okay, so you will reassess her need for the any clinical urgency. Okay, and you will reschedule the appointment. Then in home isolation, see, sometimes you will offer them telephone consultation. If the urgent care is required, attendance to the hospital should be preceded by a phone call to alert the local team. Before coming to the hospital, she has to inform to the hospital that I have just reached the hospital. Okay, then rebooking the appointments. Okay, So whatever the rebooking the appointments means, whatever appointment she has missed, she should be informed. She should be given a new appointments. Okay. And fail-safe mechanism is all the appointments which she has missed. Okay, that should be reoffered without any problem. So this is the important chart which you need to keep in mind for your exam purpose, I feel so. Okay, so this is about the recommended triage action for early pregnancy unit. Okay, what you need to do. I think this chart is only sufficient from this guideline related to the early pregnancy unit. Okay, so it describes what is the problem and what should be the recommended action. Suppose the problem is pelvic or abdominal pain and the patient doesn't have any previous scan. What should be your action? You will offer her scan within 24 hours. Okay. If she is coming with the heavy bleeding for more than 24 hours and the systemic symptoms of the blood loss, again, what should be the action? Action will be offer scan within the 24 hours. Whenever there is an evidence of septic miscarriage, right? Okay. So signs of infection like offensive discharge or temperature in associated with the symptoms of retained pregnancy tissue. Okay. What should be your recommended action? You will offer her assessment within 24 hours. Note that the temperature may be because of the COVID-19 infection, that you need to keep in mind. Okay. Then pain and or bleeding together with the pre-existing risk factor for the ectopic pregnancy. Okay, any woman who is coming with pain and or bleeding, okay, and she has any of the risk factor. Okay, what are the risk factor? Previous ectopic pregnancy, previous fallopian tube or the pelvic abdominal surgery, okay, history of sexually transmitted infection or PID, use of the IUCD or IUS, ART, current smoker or age more than 40 years. Okay, so what you are going to do, you will offer her scan within 24 hours if the location of the pregnancy is not known. Okay, so this is something which is in red thing. Okay, red thing. Okay, coming to the orange, that means less severe thing. Okay, so if woman is complaining of only moderate bleeding, what you are going to do, give her the telephonic consultation by the experienced clinician, ask her to do the urine pregnancy test in 1 week. Okay, if it is negative, no follow-up is required. If positive, then again telephonic consultation, and she may be required to do UPT or scan depending upon her situation. Okay, suppose she has the complaints of heavy bleeding, but now it has resolved. Again the same. Okay, telephonic consultation with the experienced clinician. If negative, no follow. Positive, offer telephonic consultation with or without UPT in next further 1 week. Okay, reassurance, nothing, no this thing. Okay, so only telephonic consultation with the experienced clinician is required, no routine scan is required. Previous miscarriage also, only consultation, telephonic consultation with experienced clinician, no scan. And light bleeding with or without pain, that is not troublesome for them also, no routine scan is not required, only telephonic consultation is sufficient. Okay, coming to the management of the miscarriage. Okay, so first of all the things, as I've said, that to reduce the inpatient admission due to the COVID-19, for them it is important for the woman who is having incomplete miscarriage, you can offer them expectant management. And for the missed miscarriage front, okay, for the missed miscarriage, you can offer them medical management or manual vacuum aspiration, because you don't want them to come for the surgical treatment, and that in that way it will increase the load. Okay, so that's why. For the incomplete management, you can offer them expectant management, or for the missed miscarriage, you can offer them either medical management or manual vacuum aspiration. Okay. Then counseling should be offered and performed over the phone. Okay. Wherever the surgical management, still surgical management is required, proper PPE needs to be followed. Okay. And whenever the regional anesthesia, whenever the anesthesia is required, it is better to consider the regional anesthesia, especially COVID positive patient. Always outpatient management is preferred where appropriate. Okay, then you will give her all the advice regarding the analgesia, how the process of miscarriage will be, and also you will offer the support for the woman who remains at home. Okay, those who are on the expectant or the medical management should not be offered a routine ultrasound scan. What you are going to do, ask her to repeat the urine pregnancy test after 3 weeks, as we all do. Okay, and if this is positive, then she has to call to the early pregnancy unit. Okay, and the telephonic consultation after 3 weeks also should be provided to the patient. Coming to the, whenever there is her condition is of intrauterine pregnancy but of unknown viability. Okay, what you will do, actually no further scans are recommended. If the you have to see the scan finding. If the scan findings are consistent with her menstrual date, no follow-up is required. But if they are not consistent with her menstrual date, what you need to do is you explain her that there is a risk of miscarriage and offer her telephonic follow-up after 2 weeks. Okay, so whenever the intrauterine pregnancy of unknown viability, no further ultrasound scan is required. Okay, if an ultrasound scan findings are consistent with the menstrual date, no follow-up. Okay, but if the scan findings are not consistent, then explain her the risk of miscarriage and offer her telephonic consultation after 2 weeks. Then management of the pregnancy of unknown location. Okay, where you may be suspecting of ectopic pregnancy. They again divided this into the 2 or 3 categories. Okay, so what we will use the beta HCG with or without progesterone. Most of the time we don't use progesterone, but beta HCG we use. Okay, whenever there is a low risk failing pregnancy of unknown location. Okay, low risk pregnancy of unknown location, failing pregnancy of unknown location, you will offer her pregnancy test at home in 2 weeks. Okay, and ask her to contact the local unit if it turns out to be positive after 2 weeks. Okay, whenever there is a low risk intrauterine pregnancy, okay, what you are going to do, offer her scan 1 week to confirm the location and viability. But if there is a high risk of ectopic pregnancy, then she need to return to the beta HCG or for the scan in next 48 hours. Okay, so depending upon her situation. So how you are going to manage ectopic pregnancy? Is there any medical management, surgical management? What will be the right approach? Okay, coming to the first, expectant management. Okay, so nowadays most of the time local protocol emphasize on the conservative management rather than going for the surgical thing. No, ensure follow-up is appropriate and individualized approach should be followed. You should balance the safety with regarding to the hospital attendance as much as possible compared to the risk of COVID-19 infection. Then performing beta HCG monitoring wherever possible, and if possible, if it is okay, if it is suitable for the patient, rather than monitoring every 48 hours, if it is possible, then only you can also offer them on weekly basis. Okay, and the repeat ultrasound scan should not be routine unless it is clinically indicated. Coming to the medical management with the single dose methotrexate. Actually, the detrimental effects of methotrexate on COVID-19 are minimal, though it is an immunosuppressant. Okay, still it can be used. Okay, then ectopic pregnancy, woman with an ectopic pregnancy with suspected COVID-19, whether to give her methotrexate or not. Okay, first of all, that need to be discussed with the MDT team. Okay, and that should be discussed under the senior clinician who will review her ultrasound and beta HCG report. Okay, then severely unwell women with the COVID-19 and ectopic pregnancy will need to be discussed at MDT along with the medical anesthetic output has to be put. Okay. Regarding the additional information for the methotrexate, as I said, though it is a mildly immunosuppressive, there is no risk that it increases the severity of the COVID-19 infection. Okay, though there is a theoretical risk that this immunosuppressive medication makes the person more vulnerable to the viral illness, but expert opinion suggests that we can use that. Okay, and then medical management of ectopic pregnancy, it helps in avoiding hospital admission, surgery, and potentially it decreases the overall exposure to the COVID-19. Okay, so wherever possible, you can use the medical management. Coming to the surgical management. So what is the indication for the surgical management in ectopic pregnancy? See friends, they are very specifically mentioned about this. They are saying that the surgical management for the ectopic pregnancy during this corona pandemic should only be considered following senior review of the ultrasound and beta HCG and clinical finding, and if no other management option is feasible for her. Why? Because if you go for the surgical management, that increases her risk of having anybody, even the staff, having the COVID-19 infection. Okay, so that's why they say that the whenever the other options are not feasible and the case has been reviewed by the senior person, taking into consideration her clinical finding, scan, and beta HCG report, right? Okay, so then only you will offer her the surgical management. Use of the laparoscopy as per the guidance of the RCOG should be followed. Any laparoscopic surgery, strict precautions should be taken to filter any carbon dioxide escaping into the operation theatre, and the staff must wear the appropriate PPE. Okay, where there is an option, where there is an this, what do you say, these criteria are not able to meet, then you can use the mini laparotomy also. Okay, mini laparotomy for the management of the surgical management of ectopic pregnancy. Coming to the anti-D prophylaxis. Okay, so administer anti-D prophylaxis the woman who have surgical procedure including manual vacuum aspiration or have a late miscarriage. Okay, whatever it is mentioned in the British Hematology Society or the COVID-19, no, according to that we need to follow the anti-D prophylaxis. So other early pregnancy problem, friends, it is hyperemesis, right? Okay, so first of all, again the first consultation will be over the phone to assess the Pugh's query. Okay, and he will advise her antiemetics, but if she requires an parenteral hydration, then she may need to come to the hospital. Okay, and keep this thing in mind is that vomiting is a potential risk for the transmission. Okay, that may contains the virus also. Okay, then whenever there is excessive vomiting, okay, hyperemesis gravidarum with and also the symptoms of vaginal bleeding, rule out the molar pregnancy. We know from the guidance. Okay, so this was only about the early pregnancy, right? Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Is it clear, friend? Dr. Bhanu, Dr. Devika, Shruti.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Thank you, friend.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Yeah. So quickly, I'll tell you what is important with this guideline. Okay. So next guideline is about the coronavirus COVID-19 infection and abortion care, which you need to keep only this thing in mind, friends. Okay. Only this chart. Okay. So I'll tell you how it goes. Okay. So suppose any woman requests for, we are seeing about the abortion guideline. Okay. We are seeing about the abortion care. Okay. So see, any woman who requests the abortion, first of all, you will offer her remote consultation. Either it could be through the video or telephonic consultation. Then you will provide her written information prior to the consultation via mail or through the link, right? Okay. You will provide her the patient information leaflet. So it is very important to have remote consultation should have the same standards as face-to-face consultation. That means enough information and enough time should be given the patient to allow her to ask, to give her an opportunity to ask all the questions. Okay, and so that she will be able to give a informed consent, right? Then how the abortion process will go. Okay, so first is any woman coming with the for the request of the abortion, you did the remote consultation, you provide her patient information already. Then what should be the standards of the remote consultation that they have mentioned. Then coming to the proper abortion care, how you can offer. So usually what they offer is the medical management. Okay, so medical management and wherever suitable. So they offer the medical management kit. Okay, abortion kit. Okay, so they which contains the various medications. Okay, and which they can collect from the point of minimal contact, or they can courier them. Healthcare facility can courier them. Okay, so collect with the minimal contact or post if the mifepristone approved at home pack. So in that pack, what all be there? The abortion medication will be there, friends. Any additional medication, for example, analgesic or antiemetic will be there. Then low sensitivity pregnancy test kit will be there. Then also written advice and improper information is there, and proper plan when should follow, that will be there. Okay. Then also you will offer her remote or the self assessment of outcome using low sensitivity pregnancy test after 14 days, friends. Okay, 14 days after medical abortion. And the same setting, even in the first consultation, you can discuss with her contraception, and if she is willing for that, you can pack that contraception in the abortion care pack. Okay, and you can also send it to her. Okay, for example, POPs and this thing. Then this guideline, this says that for the abortion, most of the time we say that she requires an ultrasound scan. But even the NICE guideline, and they have made very specific in this guideline, is that before abortion it is not necessary to have ultrasound. For the low risk pregnancy, it is not necessary that the patient must have ultrasound. So what are the indications? Okay, what are the indications where she should be offered ultrasound? Okay, so these are the indications. Okay, so what are the indications? Whenever the lady is unable to provide her last menstrual period, of reasonable certainty within the threshold of eligibility or the skill of provider. Okay. History or symptoms suggestive of high risk of ectopic pregnancy, such as an unilateral abdominal pain, vaginal bleeding or spotting, right? In IUCD or IUS in situ. Then whenever there is a history of tubal damage, maybe because of the surgery, maybe because of the infection and prior ectopic pregnancy. Okay. So only in these cases, okay, you are going to offer her ultrasound scan. Okay. And this is a very important point. There is a no need for the routine blood testing, even the blood group, friends. Okay. So medical management, in the early medical management, this usually we don't offer the anti-D also. Even not even the complete blood picture or even the blood, what do you say? Blood group is also not necessary. Routine blood testing is not necessary. And the other important point is, if the HTA screening is indicated, okay, usually we do this for offering the abortion screening. Okay, we will see the woman is at a high risk, and if she is found to be high risk, and if the sexually transmitted infection screening is required or a chlamydia test is recommended, then we can do it using a remote service. Remote service means, for example, web-based home testing. Web-based home testing means, I'll explain you, friends. See what they will do. They will send a kit to the woman's house, which will have that swab and this thing. Okay, swab and tube. Okay, and on the net they will show her how she can self take the swab. Okay, and then she has to repost it. Okay, so for that also she need not come to the hospital or the healthcare facility. Okay, so whenever that thing also required, she can do at a home. What about consent? Okay, so see, for consent for the abortion can be given verbally, but very important thing is, but the discussion must be recorded in the notes. Okay, she can give it verbally, even if she doesn't sign in the written, that's fine, but that you need to, as a healthcare, you need to document in your notes. Okay, and the safeguarding assessment should be individualized. Clinician must be confident that the woman can speak privately without coercion. So other important issue which is related to the abortion is safeguarding. Safeguarding means whether she has a high risk of the domestic violence because of whether because of any force she is undergoing abortion, right? Okay, so that also needs to be evaluated. Okay, and if she is, you should be very sure that whatever she is talking on video consultation and this thing, she is talking without any force. Okay, so that you need to be keep in mind. And the other measures are, even if you don't keep in mind, that's fine. Consider the other ways to manage available resources and offer woman-centered care, where you can ensure maximum input from the nursing staff. For surgical abortion, consider pain relief that does not require theater facility or anesthetic support. Then consider medical abortion in second trimester. Collaborate with the other providers. Support staff to work from home where appropriate. Okay, so they may not ask. Okay, so friend, just keep in mind that these three charts, it is on one page only. I have only divided into three slides. Okay, so which you need to keep in mind. Okay, otherwise there is nothing much which you can which you need to remember from this. Okay. See, the other important, just for your extra information, I'm telling, according to the abortion law, see, still the two practitioner must sign off. Okay, must sign off for the abortion, and sometimes it may not be possible to do this thing, no? So where you can use the electronic signature. I think you are aware of the how much of the this misoprostol and this thing should be used. Okay, so what should be the regime? Okay, so this is the regime. Okay, so misoprostol 200 milligram orally, followed by 24 to 48 hours later misoprostol 800 micrograms. Okay, that can be used. The important thing is, if the woman has been affected by the COVID-19, how we are going to manage. Okay, so I'll talk a word about that. Just word about that. See, abortion care for the woman with the suspected or confirmed COVID-19. Okay, so national guidance has to be followed. All the women must be screened for the COVID-19. See, if the woman has the symptoms or has tested positive, a risk assessment should be undertaken if the abortion can be safely deferred. Okay, so if it is possible, no, it is better to defer. Okay, and if the woman is suitable for the early medical abortion, then you will organize that. Okay, but suppose she is crossing, one important point you have to keep in mind that if she is crossing the period of that legal limit. Okay, in this guideline they advise that what you can do is you can do the feticide. Okay, you can do the feticide, and then afterwards the procedure of the abortion can be completed. This is the criteria for the medical abortion at home. I think you know that early medical abortion at home with no signs and symptoms of the COVID-19 and the pregnancy less than 10 weeks. Okay, so this thing you need to keep in mind. Yeah. Okay. So, any doubt in this, friends? Any doubt? Shall we move ahead if you are okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, dear.
Hello, Dr. Jyoti. Can you please
Yeah, Dr.
show the slide of this mifepristone, misoprostol dosage?
Yeah. So actually, you need to follow from the NICE guideline. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Jyoti.
Thank you. Yeah.
Ma'am, one more doubt. Ma'am,
Yeah,
for
Devika.
abortion, you had mentioned that there is no need of blood investigations.
Yes. Yes, dear.
Ma'am,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Tell
not
me,
even
what is your doubt then?
ma'am, not even a hemoglobin or a blood group.
Yes, yes. For the medical abortion, it is not required. See, whenever the woman is unwell, no, then only you will ask her to do for the full blood count, clotting, and blood group. Okay. If the woman is well, then you are not going to do. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Is it just
And in
for
the
this
summary,
COVID or is it otherwise? Normally also it is like that, or is it just for this COVID-19 pandemic that no blood test are being done?
I have to find out before giving you the answer. No, actually they do. Okay, at least hemoglobin and blood group they do. But I'll just confirm, dear. I don't want to commit any of this thing. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah.
Madam, when do we give anti-D then? If she's a group D negative, anti-D, when will we give?
It is the same guidance which is there, dear, in for the NICE guideline or the British Hematology Society we use, no? Okay. So then only for the medical abortion less than 10 weeks we don't use. Okay. So you have to follow the same guidance.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Quickly 2 or 3 topics and then we will finish. Huh?
Yes, ma'am.
See. Yes, yes. Okay. So the other important aspect of this COVID care is SRH. Okay, sexual and reproductive health. Okay, basically talks about the contraception. Okay. Again, the telephone consultation and the video consultation must be used, and wherever possible, you will offer them oral emergency contraception. Okay, and along with that, you will also offer the continued contraception, maybe in the form of the POPs or CSCs. Okay, and if required, if she requires any IUD, okay, as a form of the emergency contraception, then that needs to be arranged. That cannot be postponed. Okay, then for whenever there is a need of the contraceptive advice, again that will be done through the telephonic or video consultation. Now the Cyanapress, okay, Cyanapress is the subcutaneous injectable progesterone that is available for the self administration. Okay, so that patient can take it on their own. Okay, then other important point which I have mentioned regarding in this guidance is repeat prescription for the combined hormone contraceptions currently require measurement of the BMI and BP. But this BMI and BP, if it has been measured in last 12 months, no, then the same prescription, okay, the same prescription for the CSS can be used for the 6 to 12 months. So they will not require any new prescription, or for that they need to come to the hospital. Okay, and then bridging POP may be the most sensible option for short term for the majority. Because why POP always say that because this POP is, no, it is most of the time is suitable for the most of the women. That's why. Then coming to the extended use of the long acting reversible contraception. Okay, so this Nexplanon can be used for 4 years. Banded copper IUCDs can be used for 12 years. Then LNG, which contains 52 milligram, this can be extended over 6 years. Okay, they can be used for that much time. But the copper IUCDs, which are licensed for 5 years, okay, like Zydes and Kylina, they should be advised to use additional contraception, okay, in the form of the POP and also the condoms. Okay, so but these can be used for the extended period. Nexplanon, copper IUCDs, or LNG IUCDs. Okay. Okay, then if suppose the woman has concerns regarding the pain and bleeding and she is on a contraception. Okay, so first of all, again the first thing will be telephone and video consultation and trials arranged to see face to face is essential. If she is having symptoms like pelvic pain with IUD, any suspected pregnancy symptoms or neurological symptoms, then she will need a face to face appointment. Okay, for the vulnerable patient means, as we have seen, that homeless, substance abuse, who are sexual victims of sexual abuse, for them the local arrangement should be in a place to provide contraception. Okay, and for this the free condoms through the pharmacy should be made available to them. Okay, so only that thing you need to keep in the SRH thing. Okay, the next guidance was about the urogynecology. This is also very easy, friends. Okay, so regarding the urogynecology, most of the urogynecological condition will be non-urgent cases. Like most of the time they will come with the complaint of the prolapse or incontinence. But the important thing is most of the women will be more than 60 years and they are vulnerable to the COVID-19 infection. Okay, though they are not urgent, but the women are at a risk of because they are aged, that they are at a risk of COVID-19 infection. Okay, some women with the vaginal pessary will require the regular follow-up. Okay, for them you can still offer them telephonic consultation and just ensure them that the slight delay will not have any harmful effects. Okay, so for whom the urgent review is required. Okay, the urgent review means within 12 hours. So any woman who is presenting with the urinary retention. Okay, so for them urgent review is required. Okay, and what you are doing for them, you will put an indwelling catheter and you will ask her to review in a week in a trial without catheter clinic, right? Trial without catheter clinic. Okay, for whom semi urgent review is required, that is within 7 days. Okay, so the patient see, these are the patients which will come in the trial without catheter clinic. Okay, so patient requiring a trial without catheter needs to be seen to ensure that the post-void residues are within the normal range. That means this first you have put the catheter and you ask them to come within the 7 days. So this will be the semi-urgent review. Okay, and specifically to see the post-void residue. Okay, so if the post-void residue is raised, then you need to explain them the self-catheterization. Okay, and if they are comfortable with the self-catheterization, no, they can continue with that. Okay, they did not come again for that. Even the fistulation from the pessaries. Okay, so this space occupying pessaries will be there, no, like Gellhorn pessaries and shelf pessaries. They will cause the pressure symptoms and fistulation. Okay, so those women also needs to be reviewed within 7 days. Okay, then comes the early review. Early review is within the 30 days. Okay, so whenever there is these women who will have the problem related to the pessary, like bleeding, pain and ulceration. Okay, and they can be offered the face-to-face consultation unless they have the symptoms suggestive of COVID-19. Any postmenopausal bleeding woman with the intact uterus and a vaginal pessary for the prolapse should be reviewed via local postmenopausal bleeding cancer pathway. Okay, any postmenopausal bleeding, she should be referred to the 2-week gateway pathway. Okay, the other early review indication is procedentia causing the bladder and bowel problem. These also should be reviewed within 30 days. Okay, then up to 3 months is whenever there are suprapubic catheter changes. Okay, after 3 months, that means routine pessary review. Okay, so these women will come for the they becomes the after come after 3 months. Okay, any new reference should be deferred. Okay, and video consultation can be offered, but face to face should be deferred. Okay. That's it. Okay, so that thing you need to keep in from the urogynecology thing. Only one slide for the endometriosis. See, the endometriosis is not a risk factor for the COVID-19, but the thoracic endometriosis can be. Okay, so the thoracic endometriosis can be a more put the woman at a risk of acquiring COVID-19 infection. For them also, you will offer the remote consultation, and they obviously they will have the non-urgent thing, so they can be postponed. Regarding the cancer, okay, so always cancer is again a important thing which may not be sometimes postponed. So how we need to manage this cancer patient during the COVID-19 pandemic? They say that the it is important that the all decision taken with the input from the multidisciplinary team, and that should be clearly communicated with the patient. Okay, patient with the diagnosis of the cancer must remain tracked within the MDTs even if they don't want to go for the treatment. Okay, all the family members needs to be involved. Okay, then those who receiving systemic anti-cancer therapies are at more risk, right? Okay, of becoming seriously unwell if they contract COVID-19 infection. Okay, where the patient are considered at a high risk, and individual decisions should be taken. Okay, regarding the potential pros and cons of the anti-cancer treatment, and that should be documented by the MDT. Again, it will be opinion by the MDT. Okay, so can we offer some conservative management? See, this guideline says this guidance says that the where the conservative methods of the treatment have been demonstrated to show efficacy. For example, early stage, very early stage uterine cancer, endometrial cancer. Okay, with the patient with the comorbidities or elderly, for them you can offer the LNG IUS for time being. Okay, and it says that the greater utilization of the non-surgical options, including radical radiotherapy or neoadjuvant chemotherapy, will be more preferable, right? Enhanced recovery pathway must be obtained. Okay, cancer surgery must be done at the clean sites. Okay, and yeah. Okay, so from this you need not keep anything much important. Two more points I'd like to tell you. The first important thing is regarding the postmenopausal bleeding. See, whenever the restricted availability of the resources will be there. Okay, so whenever there is a no facility for the ultrasound scan, you will offer them the pelvic examination, and whenever there is a restricted facility for the hysteroscopy for this patient, even if the high risk patient, you can use the blind pupil biopsy. Okay, so that you need to keep in mind. And just friends, for the prioritization of the procedure, please go through just quickly. I'll be posting my recording also. Okay, so for each treatment, like for the surgical treatment of the cancer, for the radiotherapy and chemotherapy, they have prioritized the category. Okay, basically the aim is a life-saving thing. Okay, life-saving treatment, and the curative treatment are the priority as compared to the neoadjuvant or just a supportive treatment. Got it? Okay, so the treatment which can be a curative as compared to just adjuvant treatment are the priority. Okay, and life-saving, like suppose perforation, okay, any anastomotic leakage, peritonitis, these surgery are the priority. Okay, so that's why I said just by your general knowledge you can answer this question. Okay. Otherwise, from this thing, you need not keep anything in mind. You need not remember anything. Okay. The last two guidances about the colposcopy guidances, colposcopy, and other is about the fertility, and last one is the heavy menstrual bleeding. In the colposcopy, only one thing you need to keep in mind is what are the indication or the patient who still should be seen in the colposcopy clinic. So this is very important. Whenever their recent smear is suggestive of high grade, moderate or worse borderline nuclear changes in the endocervical cells, or the possible glandular neoplasia or suspicion of any invasive disease, these women only needs to be seen into the colposcopy clinic. Okay, got it? So this is the indication. Otherwise, low referral, no. And routine colposcopy, routine cervical smear screening, primary screening have been ceased. Okay. Any consultation, any of this thing, first should be virtual consultation, video consultation. Okay, to minimize the face-to-face consultation. Any smoke coagulation procedure, this laser excision or ablation position, it should not be used due to the vaporization, because that vapor may contain increase the spread of the viruses. Okay, so that's why that should not be used. Otherwise, the guidance is same, that we should use the PPE and all those things. Yeah. So this quickly we will go through the management of the abnormal uterine bleeding. So in this abnormal uterine bleeding, they have covered heavy menstrual bleeding, postcoital bleeding, intermenstrual bleeding also. Okay, so any woman who is coming with the heavy menstrual bleeding, woman with the heavy menstrual bleeding should be initially managed by remote communication, and she should be assured that the risk of malignancy is negligible. Then you will take a relevant history to illustrate the severity of the symptoms, also to rule out the possibility of the anemia and likely cause. Suppose if there are no symptoms of anemia, or if present anemia is likely to be mild, then you can offer her medical treatment. Okay, obviously after the exclusion of the contraindication. To reduce the need of the face-to-face interaction, you can consider using oral medication in preference to the intrauterine hormonal device. So as in our NICE guideline, no, the first thing will be what we do usually is the intrauterine copper coil. Okay, sorry, intrauterine Mirena system. So that usually we offer, but for this now, because of the COVID pandemic, you can offer them the oral medication. Why? Because to decrease the face-to-face interaction. Okay, then women should be referred as an emergency to a secondary care. What are the indication to refer them in emergency? If they are having heavy menstrual bleeding which is torrential, or pulona which is such that causing severe anemia and also sometimes causing hemodynamic compromise. So if these two indications which are causing because of the heavy menstrual bleeding, they should be referred to the secondary care on emergency basis. Okay, then a woman should be referred to the secondary care for the further management and should be seen within 30 days. So what are who all come under this? See, ongoing heavy menstrual bleeding which is resistant to the NICE recommended oral treatment. Okay, and they have the significant risk factor for the endometrial disease like obesity, morbid obesity, Lynch syndrome, woman who is more than 40 years, and whenever there is a significant anemia. So all these women should be seen within 30 days. Okay, and after 30 days, after that 30 days, what are the indication? Ongoing heavy menstrual bleeding, but no risk factor, no significant anemia. Okay, so these women can be seen after 30 days, right? So whenever once the woman gets referred to the secondary care, what you need to do, you need to assess her according to the NICE heavy menstrual bleeding assessment and management guideline. Okay, with the following exception. As I mentioned earlier, if the access to the pelvic ultrasound is limited, what you will do? You will do an pelvic examination. You will offer her to rule out any identifiable rectifiable causes like cervical fibroid or polyp. Okay, if the access to the hysteroscopy is limited, then you will offer her blind endometrial biopsy, right? Then referred woman should be as an emergency with the acute bleeding should be managed according to the local protocol. In the absence of a cause requiring specific surgical intervention or hematological intervention, what you can do, what treatment you can offer? Either you can offer tranexamic acid and a course of high dose oral progesterone, or you can offer GnRH analog and if required oral or IV iron infusion or blood transfusion for her hematinic problems, right? Okay, so see, women referred to the secondary care should be managed according to the NICE guideline. Okay, but with the following exception. If that means if the surgical or radiological treatment are restricted, then what are the options you have? See, GnRH analog you can use for the refractory bleeding despite the use of the NICE recommended medical treatment, or whenever there is a presence of significant uterine fibroid, and you can consider using this injection once in a 3 month. Okay, why? Because you want to decrease the face-to-face contact, or you can shift her to the nasal spray also. Okay, Nafarlin. Then once you start using and GnRH, need to add back therapy if you are prolonging the GnRH treatment beyond 3 to 6 months. Okay. Then high dose progesterone like norethistron or medroxyprogesterone should be administered to arrest the acute episode of the bleeding. Okay. And to regulate the bleeding or induce anemia, induce amenorrhea, you can use the cyclical courses or the continuous courses. Okay. Any woman with the suspected endometrial hyperplasia or the cancer should be managed according to the local protocol or national guidance, right? Coming to the intermenstrual bleeding. So first of all, you need to tell that woman of the age 40 years of age or over, 40 or more age with the persistent intermenstrual bleeding. That means it is lasting for more than 3 consecutive cycles. They should be referred to the secondary care and should be seen within 30 days. Okay. Who are under 40 years of age or who are using hormonal contraception with persistent intermenstrual bleeding, they can be seen beyond 30 days. Okay. Suppose if the bleeding is because of the hormonal contraception, they can be seen beyond 30 days. Okay. If the resources are if the resources for the assessment in the hospital are limited, then what are the management strategy? First of all, remote communication as far as possible. Remote communication needs to be followed. Okay. Then relevant history should be taken. Clinical relevant relevant clinical history should be taken. Pregnancy should be excluded. Okay. Then the likelihood of the where the likelihood of the sexually transmitted infection or the cancer is negligible, then what you can do, you can reassure the woman. Observation with the phone follow-up to see if the intermenstrual bleeding subside. Then you can change the hormonal contraceptive in the current users and trial. You can use the trial of hormonal contraceptive in non-users. Okay. She should be asked to come for the early pelvic examination earlier. Okay. What are the indications of the pelvic examination? Whenever there is a risk of sexually shared infection or sexually transmitted infection, or you are suspecting and cervical cancer. Okay. Because of the history of postcoital bleeding or offensive vaginal discharge. So once she comes to the hospital, what are investigation? Cervical biopsy, pelvic ultrasound scan, if required blind endometrial biopsy, a hysteroscopy with or without directed endometrial biopsy. Coming to the postmenopausal bleeding. Okay. So postmenopausal bleeding is in red flag symptoms which appears in 5 to 10% of the woman, and underlying woman will have the endometrial cancer. Okay. So first of all, these women should be managed first of all with the remote communication to confirm their symptoms, to determine if they have any COVID-19 symptoms, and to inform them that they will be referred to the secondary care with the 2-week weight referral. Okay. Then suspected or confirmed COVID-19 women should be advised to self-isolated and informed that they will not be seen in the secondary care and no longer till then no longer infectious. Okay. And then you will offer her arrangement for the retesting. Okay. In the secondary care, first of all, you will do a speculum examination. Why? Because normal cervix on speculum examination and negative cervical smear excludes the diagnosis of the cervical cancer. Okay. Then the next investigation will be endometrial thickness and transvaginal scan. Okay. This will be the first line test. Okay. Then if the endometrial thickness is less than 4 mm on transvaginal scan, you will discharge her from the care because the risk of cancer is very, very low. Okay. For the endometrial thickness more than 4 mm, you will offer them the further evaluation. Okay. And where the hysteroscopy is not possible, okay, you can take the blind endometrial biopsy also. On blind endometrial biopsy, suppose you get an insufficient sample, still that is considered normal. But that is when your devices are inserted more than 6 centimeter beyond the cervical canal. Okay. You have inserted the device more than 6 centimeter beyond the cervical canal and still you get the insufficient sample, then that's a normal finding. Okay. Then you need not evaluate furthermore. Okay. But yes, case to case consideration has to be taken. Okay. Taking into account the patient risk factor and ultrasound finding. Okay. When the hysteroscopy will be necessary, when the hysteroscopy will be compulsory. Okay. So where the blind endometrial biopsy has failed or is non-diagnostic, or to obtain a directed biopsy or conduct an endometrial polypectomy. So these are the indications for the hysteroscopy where the blind biopsy has failed or become non-diagnostic, or you want to take the directed biopsy, or also along with that you want to do the polypectomy. Okay. Yeah. Regarding the postcoital bleeding, the postcoital bleeding, the first thing will be remote communication. Okay, reassure that the cervical cancer is extremely unlikely if they have in-date negative cervical screening test. Elucidate whether they have any risk factor for the sexually shared disease. Okay, if such risk factor is present, then you will refer them to the sexual health clinic for the further investigations and management. Okay, when the woman do not have in-date negative cervical screening test, need to be seen for the speculum examination to exclude the cervical cancer or for the smear to be taken. Okay, so whenever the cervical smear is normal, speculum examination cervix is normal, then not to worry. Okay, woman with the postcoital bleeding should be referred to the secondary care within 14 days. Okay, what are the indications to refer them to the secondary care within 14 days? First of all, the appearance of the cervix, which is consistent with the cervical cancer. Okay, whenever she is age 35 or less than 35 years of age with the abnormal, absent or overdue cervical screening, age more than 35 regardless of the cervical smear history, postcoital bleeding with age less than 35 should be referred to the secondary care and seen within 42 days. Okay, since she should be seen within the 42 days and should be managed according to the local protocols. Okay, friends. And the last one is about the fertility guidelines. Okay, so in this fertility guidelines, the important thing is always we will be very careful towards the minimize the chances of the spread of the COVID-19. Okay, fair and transparent policies should be followed. Then this resumption of the treatment should not result in undue burden to the NHS. That needs to be seen. Okay, patients should be fully informed. They should give the informed consent for their fertility treatment. Okay, ensuring the patient safety. So in the ensuring the patient safety, first of all, you will give her informed all the important information. So first of all, you will tell that the present experience is first of all limited and it does not indicate the infection gets worse in pregnancy. There is no evidence that increased risk of fetal anomalies or adverse pregnancy outcome. Okay, then all the things needs to be documented. Okay, who will be the priority for the fertility treatment? Okay, so the fertility preservation treatment is the priority. Okay, for the patient who are facing cancer chemotherapy, they are at a priority. Also, women with the low ovarian reserve, advanced age, and those facing extra expirative pelvic surgery. Okay, for example, due to the severe endometritis, bilateral ovarian cyst, they are at a priority for the fertility preservation treatment. Fertility preservation treatment is a priority. Okay, caution should be applied for the woman with the underlying medical problem, and for this woman it will be better to delay the conception till this pandemic gets over. Okay, triaging, screening and testing. So for each and every before starting any surgical treatment, before starting any treatment, it is important that screening questionnaire should be applied and antigen test should be completed. Okay, patient and donors of the with the diagnosis of the COVID-19 infection, you will not start a treatment until they get recovered and they are considered as an non-infectious. Okay, then consider whether they advise patients and potential donor to self-isolate if possible from the start of ovarian stimulation until the egg collection, even if they are COVID negative. Okay, so if they are able to isolate themselves from the start of the ovarian stimulation till the egg collection, that will be better. You need to advise them. During every treatment, the questionnaire you will apply to them and you will see whether that the patient is at a risk. Okay, then the women who are negative on the questionnaire or negative antigen test, those women will only be allowed to complete their treatment. Okay, and this antigen test should be done as close to as possible to doing surgical treatment, for example pickup. Okay. Action in the event of suspected COVID-19. So antigen screen should be arranged and the treatment should not proceed unless the patient is negative. Okay, whenever the patient or donor presents with the suspected or confirmed COVID-19 after ovulatory trigger, you have given the trigger and now the patient has the symptoms or turn out to be COVID positive. What you need to do? Need to discuss in the multidisciplinary team and you have to do the individual risk assessment to balance the risk of refraining from the oocyte retrieval against those of proceeding. Okay, so you will discuss with them. Okay, and those patients who become symptomatic after oocyte retrieval but before the embryo transfer, then for them you will freeze all the embryos, you will not transfer. So this was the important thing, otherwise nothing much, friends. I think I am done with all the important points. Anything you want to ask me? All this is available on this thing, RCOG website. Anything which you want to ask me, friends? Dr. Bhanu, Dr. Ramya, Dr. Iman, any question?
Ma'am, one question. When the mother is positive, when we should screen the baby?
There is no indication that if the mother is positive, you should screen the baby. There is no indication unless the baby is unwell. Okay, and that only with the discussion of the neonatologist. Otherwise, if the baby is doing well, you are not going to do anything.
So no routine testing of the
No,
baby.
no dear, no dear. Huh?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah.
And doctor, any advice to terminate the pregnancy if the patient found to be COVID positive before 24 weeks?
Any advice to terminate the pregnancy just because of COVID-19?
Yes.
See that again will be discussed in the multidisciplinary team. Okay, but they doesn't say that there is a like no such guidance that this termination of the pregnancy is one of the option for the maybe for the maternal resuscitation or this thing. Okay, so if it is required for the mothers, like we do for the postpartum perimortem cesarean section, right? Okay, which is crossing 20 weeks pregnancy, so you need to discuss with that, but otherwise they don't have any guidance that you need to terminate the pregnancy. It may sometimes aggravate her severity also. Okay, so there is no clear cut guidance there. That has to be discussed with the multidisciplinary team if it is helping for maternal resuscitation. Yes, doctor?
Thank you.
Yeah. Apart from this, anything else, friend?
Ma'am,
Yeah. Yeah, Ramya?
if a patient coming for fertility treatment, she had
Yeah.
a history of contact with the COVID-19, should we delay the treatment or?
See, Ramya, they have this questionnaire. I was putting and they will do the antigen test. Okay, so both are negative. Okay, on questionnaire the patient is not found to be high risk. Okay, and the antigen test is negative. Then only they will start the treatment. Otherwise, no. Okay, so this is the questionnaire, dear.
Okay, ma'am. Swab test or blood test, ma'am?
Swab test, dear. Swab test, antigen test.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
in antenatal mothers, if they are COVID positive, when we need to do the repeat testing, ma'am, for clearance?
If you ask me for this guidance, they have not mentioned. Okay, there is no provision for the repeat test to see whether they have cleared or not.
Only symptomatically, if she is okay, we will discharge her, ma'am.
Improving? Yes, yes, yes.
And home isolation is advised for how long, ma'am?
In one of the postpartum guidance, they said that for 14 days.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, if you see in the guidance in the pregnancy, they said 14 days.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any question apart from this? Yeah, so please don't worry. I am really doubtful whether they will ask you regarding the COVID-19 because this is a very such new thing, and most of the time, they set paper almost at least 3 or 4 months before. Okay, I feel so. What I have heard from my mentors. Okay, so maybe I don't know whether the question will come or not, but just it is an 1.5 hour or 2 hours cut efforts. Okay, if you can just go through that. Okay, or you can listen to the recording, then it's enough. Okay. If any question comes, then you will be able to attempt it. Okay, even if you are not getting proper guidance, then you can just apply your common this thing, because I think all of you are working now in a COVID this thing. Yeah, so the same thing which is there in the guidance, right? If no questions are there, shall I close the meeting, friends? If you have any question, please post in the group. Okay, MRCOG intense preparation group. Okay, I'll be happy to answer that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much. Can we have the link for the group, Dr.
Adila, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I am there on the Telegram. You can personally message me. I'll share link with you. Okay. If you can just
Okay.
search MRCOG intense preparation part 2, you will find it. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Otherwise, you can message me personally on the Telegram. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, dear. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Okay. Do well and all the best for your exams.